Hi, I'm Dan Aubuchon, and welcome back to the Joy of Tennis Teaching. We have a special guest with us today. This is a longtime friend of mine and a student. I like to make the joke that Scott can't get away with anything with me because I've known him since before he was born. I met Scott's mom back in the early 90s, and I coached her, so I've been friends of the family for a long time. So this is Scott Cameron, and I want Scott to tell us about a job that he's had for a few years at the BNP tennis tournament here in Indian Wells. Welcome, Scott, and tell our audience about your job.
Well, thank you for having me. Been watching this show for a while, so excited to finally get on it. The BNP has the last 4 years, 3 out of the last 4 years, I've been a hitting partner at the BNP Indian Wells tournament hosted here. And it's a really fun job. Basically, I get to hit with the players, the men and the women. We have either full practices that can go up to 1 to 2 hours, or just pretty easy match warm-ups right before their matches. It's really fun, a good experience for me, just to learn how to play against these level players.
Great. The idea of the hitting partner is a special amenity that they don't have at all of the pro tournaments. It's one of the special features, like so many of them here at the Indian Wells tournament for the players. And explain to our audience, Scott, the vast amount of money that you get paid for doing this job.
Unfortunately, I get paid zero, but I get paid an infinite amount of experience. So that's really what I'm doing it for. And the tournament entry is free, of course, for me. So I get to see all the matches if I'm not on court hitting.
Great. Tell us some of your favorite experiences that you've had with players.
Well, gosh, there's been so many. Like I said, I've been doing it 3 out of the last 4 years, and the first year might have been the craziest of the years because it was the October tournament when they hosted it here in October, and there were only 3 hitting partners. One of them was myself, so we were constantly running between courts, and we were hitting with so many different players for those 2 weeks. And I think my favorite memory from that year was hitting a backhand return winner on Daniil Medvedev, and it is actually caught on video, and you can hear him saying, "Oh my God." It was probably the best shot I've ever hit in my life, and maybe ever will hit in my life.
Yeah, I've got that video clip on my phone, which I occasionally will listen to. So that was an experience that you had warming up. Medvedev and his opponent, Grigor Dimitrov, for 30 minutes each on the big stadium court. But most of the time you were on the practice courts, right?
Correct.
Okay. Great. And what's been the difference that you've noticed over the years? Any differences?
Not really. Of course, the first year was the COVID, so the restrictions were much more heightened. Now there's a little bit more leniency. Of course, the fans this year, I think you talked about it in your last episode, was more than they've ever had. So you have a lot of people out there watching, which was a big change from the first year where there was virtually no fans there. And so just the pressure of having hundreds of people watching you, and I know they're not there to see me, but I'm on the court, still having to perform in front of hundreds of eyes. So that's been the biggest thing to get used to, and I think it's actually helped me quite a bit.
Good. The original idea was I got in contact with the director of tennis at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden, and he wasn't the one who organized the practice partners, but he put us in touch with the woman who was in charge. And Scott, I wanted Scott to do this because I wanted him to see how close he was. Scott isn't just a hitting partner. Scott's trying to make it as a professional tennis player. So can you tell us a little bit about what that journey's been like since you graduated from college?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2020. Again, COVID was very much in the weeds, and immediately got in the car and moved out here and began training on the daily, maybe 4 hours a day here in the desert. I remember that first summer I was here I vowed to never ever be here in the summer again. But we were training, and we really constructed my game to be a serve and volley based game style. And ever since then, I've been trying to build on that and play as many tournaments as possible. I have made a few trips overseas to Europe and Africa to play futures, and with some results mixed in, some good, some bad. And the ultimate goal is to continue to do that this upcoming May, and go back to Africa for 4 to 8 weeks, somewhere in that sweet spot, and see if I can get some more points on the board, and really just keep harping away at the serve and volley gameplay that we've kind of designed that would suit me best.
Great. Our audience is made up mostly of tennis teachers and people that are knowledgeable about tennis, but I don't think everybody understands what you mentioned about points and the climb. Could you talk about that a little bit? Just what it's like entering tournaments, trying to get into different events, why you get into some but not others.
Sure, yeah. It's a strange thing, the way tennis, professional tennis works. And a lot of people, it's not like getting drafted to the NFL or anything like that. So there's 3 main ranking point systems you really want to focus on. And the first one, the lowest, is what they would call a national ranking. And above that is the ITF world ranking. And above that is the ATP point ranking. That's what you would see on TV most of the time. So the tournaments that I normally play are the ITF tournaments. But currently right now in the United States, those tournaments are a bit tougher to get into, because you're also dealing with all of the D1 college players that are here playing college and also playing these ITF tournaments. So for me, the best way to actually continue to build on those ITF points is to go to other countries where there's maybe less players, but here in the United States I can still get a lot of progress done playing USTA national tournaments and gaining national points, which still builds my ranking up in the US, which allows me to get into more ITF tournaments over in Europe and Africa and anywhere in the world, really, with the eventual goal to get ATP points. And to do that, you must win all your rounds in the qualifying, whether it's a 2-round or a 3-round qualifying ITF tournament. Once you're in the main draw, then every match you win is worth actual ATP points. And those are very elusive, so I have yet to get one of those, but that is the ultimate goal this summer.
And the idea, just to make it a little bit clearer for people, is your entry is based on your points. In order to get into the Indian Wells tournament, you pretty much have to be ranked in the top 90 players in the world, maybe even higher than that. What they do is when you enter a tournament, they say what the cutoff is. And the cutoff is based on the number of entries allowed into that tournament for the ranking. So they'll have some spots for qualifiers into that tournament, some spots for wild cards, which is an entry directly into the tournament that's granted by the tournament directors. So when you see, let's say, a big tournament that has what they call a 96 draw, there'll probably be only 80 spots open for that tournament, and the rest will be filled by wild cards and qualifiers. Wild cards are granted for whatever reason the tournament director wants. Usually it has to do with agents, country affiliation, maybe some a local player for that area of the world. And qualifying, it's the same thing. Your entry into the qualifying is based on your ranking points as well. So Scott will be here in California training until May, and then he heads off to the ITF tournaments in Tunisia, where he'll be playing in the qualifying with the goal of
making it to the main draw
and getting those ATP points. Thanks a lot, Scott. Anything else you'd like to say about your training and your development as a player?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, just to harp on Dan, he's just been such a good mentor for me. And although right now it's been, tough with everything that's going on here, we've actually made some of our best progress, I think, in the last 6 weeks. Able to get him on court a little bit, and he still knows his stuff. There was the other week, I'll tell this story quick. I was at the BMP hitting with Kristina Bushka, and I was hitting pretty well, I thought, and we were doing about 15 minutes of kind of warm-ups, and then we were playing points. I served every single point, and I served very well. And throughout that whole week, I had been having incredible pain in my right bicep. And I hadn't told Dan because I didn't want to worry him. I didn't want him to think I was doing anything wrong technically on the serve, which of course I definitely was, but I was just chalking it up to, oh, these guys are hitting so big, it's just hurting me. I come off the court and I go over and meet Dan on the bench, and he's like, hey, you served really well. I'm like, yeah, thanks. He's like, but how bad does your arm hurt? I said, oh my God, it hurts so bad. And he said, yeah, well, I could tell, and I didn't want to say anything because you were serving well, but the way your motion was looking, it should hurt really badly. And he was right, and I was just so shocked that with his vision impairment, he was still able to see it and diagnose it within the day, and then we fixed it that very next week. And now I have virtually no pain in the arm, and serves feeling great.
And that'll be the teaching point for the day that we end on. One of the things that in PBI we would always say, and Peter would always harp on, is form is not the fundamental. We don't care what a player looks like. If a player has something that they're doing with their form that's unusual, you don't change it if it's working and if it's not causing pain. So when I watched Scott serve, I noticed something in his motion that I didn't like at all, but he was getting a great result. His serve was good power, great consistency. I didn't know if he was hitting it accurately or not because I didn't know what he was aiming for, but it was in all the time. So that was my next question. I didn't want to change it just because I didn't like the form. The follow-up question is it hurting you? So if you're out there and you've got a player that has some unusual technique, first of all, see if it works. And if it works, then evaluate whether it's hurting them or not. If it works and it's not hurting, don't change it. If it's hurting them, definitely change it. So that's all for this week, and thanks a lot for joining us again on The Joy of Teaching Tennis. Take care, everyone.